Hey everybody, welcome to WP Roundtable, episode 156. My name's Kyle. I'm coming to you from Michigan, working at Easy Digital Downloads, and I've got a great guest on the show today. Scott Carter is with me. How you doing, Scott?
Hey, doing fine. How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing pretty great. I'm pretty excited about having you on the show and looking forward to our conversation.
Me too. Happy to be
Cool.
here.
Scott runs a business called Barrel Roll, which we're going to be talking about in just a little bit. It's a WordPress maintenance service, and it's pretty sweet. So
Thanks.
before we learn all about Scott and Scott's business, let's cover our quick picks of the week. It's just a part of the show where we share something that we think is interesting or just generally worthy of sharing with the world. And today, I was pretty impressed with a website buyer's guide, which was released by my friends over at Sterling Technologies. Thomas Sterling is the founder of that company. They're a Boston-based agency. They do fantastic work. Really, I consider them an elite shop. And they put out some pretty cool stuff now and then to the world. And this time they released the 2018 Website Buyer's Guide. It's a long PDF, kind of an extended infographic, if you will. But it has just like some really well condensed but useful information, which I think would be a good resource to share at meetups, prospective clients, the kind of thing totally worthy of putting in front of people, especially people considering getting a website developed. So that's available on their site. They sent it out to their newsletter subscribers, and I recommend taking a look at it. You have anything to share, Scott?
Yeah, that just made me think of a site called Review Signal. So it's reviewsignal.com. And if you haven't heard of it, what it does is it takes all of these different review signals from social media sources like Twitter, aggregates them into a database, gives them points based on the algorithm's detected tone. So if it's a positive review, it's like a +1. If it's a negative review, it's a -1. It's neutral. Maybe it's a 0. I don't know. But so the guy who's run it has combined all of these signals into a database that shows you who are the best hosts for websites. And the cool thing about it is it's relatively unbiased in the sense that most review websites are basically trying to get you to click on affiliate links. So they're writing reviews that are like, oh, this host is the best in the world. And the next week, the next one comes out, oh no, this host is the best in the world. And at the end and all sprinkled throughout are these affiliate links. You can't really trust it. But Review Signal is great because they don't do that. And because of that, it's fairly objective. Also, they have a way of sort of unearthing hosts that you never would have heard about. And one of them that they review themselves when they do their annual performance comparison is called Lightning Base. And we've been working with Lightning Base for about a year now after I saw their ridiculously high test results in that performance analysis. And they totally meet those expectations. They're fantastic. So they're so small that they don't even rank in their shared hosting, top 20, top 50, whatever. But somehow they got into that performance review, and that's how we found out about them. So anyway, that's a cool site. People should check it out and just have a reliable source for hosting reviews.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I've heard of Review Signal, read some of those like annual
Yeah.
summaries that they do, those big reports. Those are pretty cool. There's a few different websites who put out articles kind of like that. I think Review Signal is known for producing something that is really, really thorough and is about as unbiased as you can get with these kinds of reviews. So great
Yeah.
resource.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And cool story that you discovered a provider you're satisfied with through that process. That's a pretty good testament for those the value of those reviews.
One of the hardest things in the WordPress industry to do is to find a really reliable, high performance host that not only has a history of success with hosting, but that you can monitor the uptime and see 99.99%, that you can send a ticket in and get a reliable response that you're not going to have to go back and forth with for days on, and that you can afford to either resell if that's your thing, or to simply point a client towards to pay for themselves, and have it be comparable to others, uh, but not so cheap that it looks fishy. So, that was always one of the most challenging things in the early days when we started doing WordPress development. And it's nice to have a couple trusted hosts that we can work with now and not have to worry about that anymore.
Sure. Yeah. Cool. Well, Scott, let's talk a little bit about your background here and help anybody tuning in now or in the future understand how you got where you're at. I want to go back in time to when you were a little bit younger, before your career was really rolling, before barrel roll was a thing. And tell me a little bit about what your career aspirations were, what you wanted to do with your life, and how you set about doing it.
All right. Well, when I was a kid, I'd say I was about 11 years old. I knew I wanted to work with technology. There was really no doubt about it in my mind. That was it. I used an old, like 486 tower machine, and with the little LEDs that said 486 on it. When you turn it on, it's fantastic. Sound like an air conditioner running beside you. It was wonderful. I was like, well, this is it. I'm not doing anything else. And I never went to college. I worked straight out of high school. The public school division hired me to be a technology intern, and then I had a job offer when I left high school to be a systems analyst. And then a couple years after that, they promoted me to network administrator. So I basically was in charge of the technology and running the equipment and servers and desktops and network and wireless and everything for the public schools that I went to as a kid. Then I started a company called United Networks on the side, which is the parent company of Barrel Roll. And United Networks at first was mostly an IT company, and doing service and support for small to medium businesses, and network infrastructure, desktop support, stuff like that. And then we started to do website development fairly early on. This was around, we started United Networks in 2000, and it's around 2001, 2002 we started doing the website development piece of it. As that grew, website development started to become a larger and larger piece of the business for United Networks. So fast forward 5 or 6 years, and it has become a significant piece. And we start to get into WordPress development at that time. I'd say that was probably, I don't even know, it was probably 7, 8, 9 years ago, something like that, when we started working with WordPress. It's been a while. And quickly learned that WordPress is just where it's at. We were working with Joomla and Drupal and just PHP files and static HTML sites and things like that, but just quickly decided, okay, WordPress is where we want to focus our attention. So we migrated as many of our other clients to WordPress as we could. And since that time, I think the market saturation of WordPress has proved that that was a good call. Is numbers between 25 and 30% of the internet running on WordPress is what you read out there now. So I think that was a good call. After a few years of building a lot of WordPress sites for people, we saw that there was a need in the maintenance industry. Now, of course, there were already people out there doing this. So we had a lot of good people to model ourselves after, people like what Ryan Sullivan's doing at WP Site Care, and a handful of other people who've been doing that for a long time. We had a lot of good competition to look at and sort of say, all right, well, here's what they're doing. And, what do we want to do that might be similar, but maybe a little bit different to their models? And so that's what I did. I spent a few months back in August 2015 timeframe looking at what everybody else was doing, deciding what I liked that they did, what I didn't like that they did, and coming up with a solution that we named Barrel Roll that does WordPress maintenance on a national level. And we set up the site and started selling it right away. We started getting new members in. We call them members because we consider people to be part of our family, part of a team, part of a community, not really like customers where you buy something and go away, or clients where you work with each other just randomly every once in a while. But a member is somebody who gets something on an ongoing basis. So that's why we call our folks members. And it's really taken off. It's been great. We're in our 3rd year now of Barrel Roll. It's been fantastic. We see a lot of growth there, and I think there's big potential for that to become the main thing that we do in hand in hand with regular development.
Way cool. Yeah, there's a lot going on there, Scott. Thanks for the full scope. The background is impressive. A couple things I want to touch on. Let's start with I'm very interested always in, like, especially when you're starting a new venture like this, when that moment when you have like the seed of an idea for a new division or brand or product or something like that. And the process that you go through to validate that idea, and how you, just mentally engineer a plan that is unique and special, and you validate everything that goes into it. So do you mind taking us back a little bit to that time where you said, I think I see a need in the market
Mm-hmm.
for another maintenance service? You're not first to market, which you acknowledged you learned from existing competitors. Like, what are some of the signals that you saw that indicated the market needs another? And what are some of the things that really stood out to you, said, we can be better or stand out or differentiate ourselves in some of these ways? Was that a long research process? Talk
No,
about it.
it took 3 months or so to go from idea to launch of the site. When we'd work with WordPress a ton, so it's very easy for us to roll out an idea or a product in WordPress. It's just a matter of finding a situation where we feel like there's a niche to be filled, and then finding the most efficient way to deliver that. We already had a lot of WordPress clients, so it wasn't a matter of not having anyone or not having any experience with it. It was just taking what we had done already and packaging it. So we'd
Mm.
already been providing WordPress maintenance services, and we had been doing it every few months for each one of our clients, sort of on a manual basis, saying, okay, we need to get into your site, spend a few billable hours doing some updates and checking everything. And then after we do the updates, we'll check it again. We'll give you a thumbs up, and then we'll move on and we'll come back to you. Well, that's just inefficient, because when some of our clients, we do it more often than that. Some of them would want to do it less often. And we found that in the end, they were spending the same amount of money per year that they would spend under, for example, one of our maintenance plans that we have now, except for there would be a period of 1 to 2 or 3 months where their site would just be out of date. And that's not only insecure, but they're missing functionality that they could have, optimization that they could have, eyes on the site telling them when things are wrong or things could be improved. So we said, okay, the obvious thing to do is to do this monthly, not only from a monetary standpoint for us, because it locks in a certain amount of revenue that you can predict year over year, but for them, it gives them a better experience overall with WordPress and with their website. So we said, all right, well, we've got these people we're maintaining now, and we think we can get most of them over onto a maintenance package. And we already have. We've got just about all of them put on barrel roll now. The ones that we don't would never do anything anyway. So they're basically just the kind of people who want to set it and forget it and just don't care what the risks are. So we started slow, and we pulled a handful of our existing clients and said, hey, this is our new service, go ahead, jump on it. We think it's perfect for you. Here's why. And they did. They didn't have a problem. They understood. They saw the logic in it. And they went. And so that was our initial client base, was our initial members in Barrel, which took a lot of the risk out of it. So if I'm starting a company and I don't have an existing client base, or I don't have an existing revenue stream, it's so much riskier. But with me, I already had all this. So all I had to do was take it from over here and move it over there. And that's it. And if they didn't want to move over, I was still going to make money. I mean, I'm still going to support their sites and make money. It just won't be as consistent. It's just more annoying. I don't have them in my nice little list of everybody who needs this done, and I can't just click one button and do it all for all of them at one time. I have to go and manually do it. So that's another benefit to it for both sides, is you get it more automatically. It's done in a more automated way. But so when you're looking at the initial phases, you have to look at the competition. It's very saturated. And at the time, I didn't even realize how saturated it was, because you see the names over and over again in the market, and you say, okay, well, those are the big players. What you don't realize is there are thousands upon thousands of other people doing this. They're just not doing it as well. But it doesn't mean that they're not gobbling up people behind the scenes for their own service. It just means you'll never hear about them, you know? So, and then a lot of companies who do WordPress development are now starting to add their own maintenance services into contracts, which to me, it seems like, okay, that's a good idea, and everybody should have their site maintained, but you need to be able to focus on the maintenance part. In other words, building a website and maintaining it are not the same things. I find that a lot of times when people are building a website, maintenance is pushed to the background all the time, and what happens is they won't go and routinely maintain the site. It might be part of an agreement, but what they really mean in the agreement is they'll do it when you ask them to do it. But that's not good enough. You need somebody to be proactive. You need someone to be looking at your site, scanning it several times a day for malware, scanning it numerous times a day to see if updates are available, knowing which updates you can apply and which ones you should wait a day or two on because they'll probably break and need a little, .1.1 patch to be applied. And then applying those and testing it properly. And that's another thing a lot of sort of lesser or design houses don't do when they do their WordPress maintenance. They don't actually check to see if updates broke anything. So I don't know if I answered your question or not about the initial phases of, but that's what we did. We just took a close look at what everybody else was doing. I think if I had to pick a couple things that they were doing that we thought we could do better or differently, it was, how do you package your plans? Everybody does plans differently. Some people do like we do, where you have 3 plans and you choose. Some people do an a la carte kind of thing, where you literally just pick the features you want. Okay, I don't need backups, but I need security scans, but I don't need core updates, but I need theme and plugin updates. Well, that's okay, but I don't think that's a good. First of all, that's very difficult to market, and second of all, what if the people don't know what they're looking for? You know, a lot of people who come to us just don't know what all this stuff means and how it all works together. So part of our job is to educate them on why this all matters. We're not none of the stuff in our packages is fluff. It's all there because you need it. And if you don't think you need security scans, you're wrong. If you don't think you need backups, you're wrong. You know, and it's just, that's part of what we're doing, is trying to educate people. And it can be a little bit of a challenge to educate people on some of those things, but you push forward.
Sure. Yeah. Lots going on there again too. And thanks. That's a good answer to the question. A couple things that I'm curious about. One, you were able to get barrel roll going, as you said, right out of the gate, because you had an audience. You had established customers that you could just move over to this new brand. It was very natural. What did you do to take that next step where barrel roll is getting customers on its own? It's standing on its own legs, and it's capable of bringing in its own customers for that brand and for that service. That's a big step. What did you do that really made that work?
We did some light advertising, which brought in some new members, and we got a lot of word of mouth. You know, we got listed in some blog posts where people were comparing the top WordPress maintenance services. That's been fantastic. You get in a couple of blog posts from some sites that get a lot of traffic, and you get a lot of people looking at your site and comparing you. You know, they go and they click on everybody, they open up a tab with everybody in the blog post, and they go site to site and compare. And I think we compare favorably to a lot of the competition out there. And because of that, we might have a person who goes and visits our site 4 times, and then they send us an email or they call and they ask a couple of questions, and then they join. We generally, if we get somebody on the phone or via email, we'll eventually get them to join, because I think we have a strong value proposition, a good history of success, and measurable success. It's one thing that's different about us in our competition some of our competition, I'd say some of the better ones, do a really good job of talking about what they're good at and talking about the value of their service. So what we've tried to do is show the value of our service in the technical aspects. So we've got a blog post that talks about how we've improved site speed of some of our clients up to 70%, on average something over 50%. And those are real measurable results, because when we start with someone, we do an assessment of their site, we do a tiered scan of their site with several different tools. We log all of it. We do an average of several different scans to find what their site speed is, their page load time for their homepage. Then we do the work on their site, the initial work, the initial recommendations, and we measure again. And that's where we get that 50% improvement in page speed and load time. So I think that's one of our big selling points, is that we have a lot of experience with optimization. We're very good at it, very comfortable with it, and confident that we're going to be able to take someone's site and make it faster.
Sure. Yeah, that's pretty cool. You talk a little bit about the market that you're in. WordPress maintenance is kind of an interesting space. Hasn't existed for a super long time, but it has been for a few years now. And you have been operating barrel roll for a few years yourself. Talk a little bit about how this market has changed since you first started. The things that I know are that the market's gotten bigger. There's more WordPress users than there were when you started, but there's probably also more competitors at the same time. Are you one in 1,000, difficult to differentiate, a crowded market, or is the market just so big that it's not that hard to run a sustainable maintenance business right now?
Well, I would think twice about starting it now if I were looking at the marketplace in the same way that I did in 2015. I think if you were to look at it now, you'd see the established players only more established. The saturation has gotten more significant over time. Other WordPress hosts are starting to include pseudo maintenance services in their monthly and annual hosting agreements. Now that's super shady, and I would never trust a host to provide quality WordPress maintenance. And I've never seen one provide what we're doing or what our top competitors are doing. But they will talk like they're doing that. And the problem is a lot of people believe it. So when a WordPress maintenance company says, we'll provide support and updates so you don't have to do a thing, what they're really talking about is they'll automatically apply a WordPress core update, or they'll answer trouble tickets about plugins to a certain degree, or they'll help you if you have a problem posting something, to your site, that kind of stuff. But what they're not going to do is they're not going to do security scans, and they're not going to do automated offsite backups. They're going to back up to their own server, sometimes the same server that your site's hosted on. So if that server goes down, not only is your site gone, but your backups are gone too. They're going to when you have a real problem with a plugin that people face every single day, and you can't, and it's not something as simple as updating it or turn it off and back on again, they're going to tell you to contact the plugin developer. Well, a company like ours will actually figure out what the problem is, even if it means we need to contact the plugin developer. So we do all of that for you, whereas they're never going to do that. So one of the big differences between then and now is that you've got an increase in the monthly maintenance fees. I'd say I've seen a lot of our competitors go up in price, and some of them have eliminated their fees on the lower end to go higher and just start with like a $99 base package or something like that per month. Some of them have just increased their upper end from $200 or $300 a month to $400 or $500 or $600 or $700 a month, something like that. I can understand the logic behind that, because what we find is that people need more help than they realize. And when you start to get into their site, clean it all up, optimize it, the next logical step is to become more of a consulting agency and a developer, and actually go in and improve their site, add content, improve search engine optimization, help them with their advertising campaigns and stuff like that. So you're always doing the maintenance, but you sort of elevate it to another level where you're more like a consultation and partnership and things like that. So all of that makes sense to me. I can see why all that would be happening, but it makes it harder to become an entry-level WordPress maintenance person because it's harder to pick up these people. And I'd say the most challenging thing to starting the business now would be that WordPress hosting is so cheap, it's so prevalent. WordPress as a product and as a platform has gotten better about handling updates, better about telling you when things are going wrong or when things are broken, better about telling you how to fix those things. Plugin developers, theme developers, all that has gotten better over the past few years instead of worse. So that makes it more challenging to jump in as a WordPress maintenance company and have a value add there. So you have to sort of be very, very good at what you're doing right away. There's not a lot of time to figure out how to do things. You have to kind of be able to swim immediately or you'll just sink. So I think that's probably the things I would say. If you're looking to start it right now, you want to make sure that you're ready, that you've got a base of clients that you can start out with would be a great thing to have, like what we had when we started. And if none of that, then you need to have a budget to be able to ride out the storm for a little while and an advertising budget to get your message out there and try to get in front of as many people as possible initially.
Yeah. The maintenance market reminds me a lot of the hosting market just because there are so many players of all sizes, and all of them find it very challenging to differentiate, at least for the most part. Like there's a heavy burden on them now to continue to innovate and really come up with creative new reasons for them to be a preferred choice. And that seems like that's definitely the case in the hosting market. There's all kinds of good hosts, and making a choice between them can come down to very granular factors. Maintenance service companies seem to experience very similar challenges where where the customers are not going to have a hard time finding a potential provider, but might have a bit of homework, like you mentioned, a lot of tabs open in a browser, determining which is the right one for them. And that could be kind of interesting. It's not the same as like maybe the agency service market, where if you're reasonably good, you'll probably be okay. They have an advantage of maybe being able to more easily target a geographically focused client base or certain verticals and so on. But I don't know if my observations are in line, but it sounds like they match what you have observed.
Yeah, I would say one of the reasons why we don't do hosting is because it's so competitive, and because I don't think that you can do WordPress hosting and be good at it unless it's the only thing that you do. Just like I don't think you can go out and say that you're doing WordPress maintenance if you're really maintaining WordPress and Joomla and Drupal. You know what I mean? You can't be great at everything. You have to pick something if you really want to excel at it. And a lot of hosts out there that will host whatever you put on an Apache server, they're not really great at any one of those things because they're trying to optimize their software to run whatever you put on it, which is just too wide open. So then you try to go and you find more specific WordPress focused hosting, and that does narrow the field a lot. And I do think that there are only a few really good WordPress hosts, and every year we see that list get shorter and shorter as they start to get bought out by conglomerates, or their support wanes, or they have some sort of massive critical network operations center issue that they don't explain well or don't communicate, stuff like that.
Sure.
So I think that years ago we did WordPress hosting. just general website hosting. And I thought, hey, it's a great way to have annual renewable income I don't have to do much for. And then I realized, no, I shouldn't be messing with this. I should be focused on WordPress and design and maintenance and just leave it at that. And I've been thrilled with that decision. I would never go back to doing hosting again. So to me, it's all about finding somebody that you trust, whether it's a host or a maintenance company, and somebody who's got a track record of results. And those things are easy to look up because you can look at things like testimonials and reviews with WordPress maintenance sites. You can look at how long they've been in the business. If they just popped up 6 months ago, that's a pretty big risk to jump on board with something like that. And for hosts, it's the same thing, except for you can go to places like Review Signal and see a lot more data there for them and stuff like that.
Pretty cool. I want to set up the next topic a little bit. Looking back on the time that you've been doing this, whether it be providing custom services or the maintenance service, have there been times, especially really notable times running that business, where some kind of big change came, updates to WordPress itself, or maybe themes and plugins that you relied heavily on, which impacted your business in a big way? Positively or negatively? Anything come to mind?
Yeah, there have been a couple of big changes in the past few years. In terms of the negative side, I would say there have been a couple of botched updates by people. Yoast SEO. There was a couple of times where they put out something that broke or didn't work quite right. The people over at Rocket Theme, they developed the Gantry 4 framework, and then a while ago, they launched Gantry 5. But there's no end of life for Gantry 4. They just sort of stopped working on it recently. It's got a lot of bugs. So people with Gantry 4 are just kind of stuck. And I've been talking to their developers, and they're just sort of like, eh. And sort of like, okay, we'll just go to Gantry 5. But that's a redevelopment project. I
Right.
can't just go to someone and say, all right, we're going to move you to 4 to 5, and it'll take 20 hours to do it. So here's the billable time for that. That's sort of a nightmare. Also, this transition with WordPress as WordPress.com by Automatic, to trying to be more and more like Wix and Squarespace and stuff like that. That's a little scary, I think, in terms of not just my business model, but I think for WordPress as a whole. I mean, I get it that they're trying to do this thing where they're trying to make it more accessible and more of a product and with a monthly plan and all that stuff where people can sign up and I understand the integration of the interface and having the ability to manage multiple sites from one interface on WordPress.com. I get all that, and that sounds interesting. But at the end of the day, I worry about a split between WordPress.com and WordPress.org. And if the core product goes too far away from the WordPress.org model, I think it's all going to suffer. In other words, when you introduce something like Gutenberg into the marketplace and people are talking about it in the sense that it might end up forking the product out to where you've got like a 4.9 fork pre-Gutenberg and a 5.0 fork post-Gutenberg, you could be in a situation where you fragment a community that does not need to be fragmented. So that concerns me long term. I think the pros, the things that I've seen that have been really positive, super, amazing amounts of growth in the community. No doubt about that. That when I started, no one was talking about WordPress being 25% of the internet. Now they're talking about it being 30% of the internet. I don't think that can grow too much further just because I think the saturation is probably there already. I don't think we're going to wake up one day and see a headline that says WordPress is 50% of the internet, but it could probably go up another 5 or 10%, maybe. I don't know. That's great for people like us. The bigger the market, the more potential there is. It's fantastic. So that's great. I think that a focus on user experience, even I don't necessarily think Gutenberg is the way to go for that, but I think a focus on user experience, a focus on ease of editing and ease of use is great. And unifying the editing interface with the theme interface and the front end design portions makes a lot of sense, giving the user a better overall experience that's closer to what the final experience for their visitors will be makes a lot of sense. So I've really enjoyed watching the growth of design plugins like Divi by Elegant Themes, Beaver Builder, all those kinds of page builder tools and things like that. I think those are great. I think Gantry 5 is great from the Rocket theme people. I just wish they had a migration path from 4 to 5. But I think Gantry 5 is fantastic, especially once they added inheritance to it a while back, which is wonderful. It makes it great for building large sites.
Yeah, I'm curious and about a few things there, because this is an important topic right now, and everybody's talking about it, and a lot of people are worried. A lot of people are excited. I want to know a couple things. Let's start with how you think this will affect your business. At this chain, there's a plan in place. It's getting pretty specific. It's not done or finalized, but we're starting to see that this is coming pretty soon, and it's nearing completion. So how do you feel about this affecting barrel roll and everything else you do?
So you're talking about Gutenberg, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a scary thing I think it should be scary for everybody. I think that it's moved too fast. It's a little bit blinded by ambition and trying to meet an artificial goal. Trying to do WordPress 5.0 is a little, I think, ahead of itself. Now, just as you mentioned, I've heard various things about revising that or changing the way it will be deployed. The initial conversation way back was that it was going to come out with 4.9 point something and be integrated into core that way as a sort of a notice that you would see in your dashboard, like activate now or something for the new editing experience. There's even in some GitHub chat or somewhere screenshots of that they were like about to push out into the core update and they didn't do it. Thank God. So that would have been a disaster because it was definitely not ready then. I don't think it's ready now. I played with it when they put out 2.0 not long ago, a couple weeks ago. And it's an interesting editing experience. It's not polished. It doesn't have integration of custom fields, a lot of the meta fields and stuff like that. I don't think all the taxonomy stuff is there where it should be. I don't particularly like the editing experience that much, although I can see where they're going with it. I can definitely see where it would be an improvement if implemented properly. Here's my main concern, and I think the thing that people should be really worried about. When Gutenberg comes out, if it's integrated into core and enabled by default for every WordPress site, millions of websites are going to break instantly. And they'll not only probably break on the back end, they could break on the front end too, which is even riskier. But imagine waking up on a Monday morning, finding out you're getting that email from your host saying, hey, we've automatically updated WordPress to 5.0, which, by the way, if you have any control over it, turn that off. You should never update core automatically to major revisions. Just minor ones are usually safe. But at any rate, you wake up to that, you go and you log in, you're like, oh, cool, brand new version of WordPress. And you go and you edit a post or a page, and it's just garbage. It's just gobbledygook. You can't edit it. It doesn't work. You're missing all of these custom fields you paid thousands of dollars for your developer to add to it, or your meta boxes aren't there at all, or you get all these notices that all these plugins need to be updated, and you update them and data's lost or something like that. All those are very real problems that could happen if the launch isn't handled in the right way. So recent posts I've read, again, none of this is official as far as I know, but recent posts I've read from people who are involved in the product and people who are blogging about people who are involved in the project say that Gutenberg will be disabled by default when it's launched into core, when it's integrated into core, and then it will be just optional. You can just enable it and use it if you want to. Now, that makes more sense from a technical standpoint because it gives you the opportunity to opt in, basically, and it's less risky. But if it's not done in that way, and the initial conversations and talk, especially by Matt at WordCamp and all that kind of stuff, has been that it would be enabled by default because they want to get in front of the maximum number of users and make it the new WordPress editing experience, that's it's massively risky. So I hope it doesn't end up going that route. I don't like the idea of uh, a legacy editor plugin that you can install and use that as a fallback. I think that's just half measures. That's no good. It needs the WordPress core editing experience needs to be 100% reliable, and you can't mess with that. I mean, that's one of the most important parts of WordPress. So you can't mess with something like that until you can't roll out a huge change like that unless you're sure it's going to work. And right now, nobody's sure it's going to work. In fact, most people just say it will not work. Definitively will not work on most WordPress installations reliably.
Sure. Sure. So it sounds like a very significant part of the concern is about the execution more so than the overall direction.
Well, I'd say that the direction in terms of the vision is right-headed. I think that the idea of unifying an interface that pulls in more functionality from the theme area, the customizer area, custom fields, and setting it up in such a way as to where when you're editing it, it looks closer to what it's going to look like on the front end. All of that makes perfect sense. And the execution with blocks, I don't really love very much, especially the way certain blocks are handled. I don't like having to create an image block and then sort of right align the image block and left align a text block and all that. It's just sort of sloppy to me. It's sort of convoluted. But I see that, I understand it, and I think, okay, I know where you're going with that. From my point of view, is somebody who's got to manage tons and tons of WordPress sites, I need a plan in place before this launches. And, of course, we're going to be ready. We're going to make sure all of our members are covered. We're going to do our best to make sure that sites don't go down. If it looks risky, we'll hold off on 5.0 until we can assure our members that their sites are going to be safe and functional when we hit that update button. But there's a limit to that. You can't go but so far on holding out on a WordPress update before you make someone's site insecure. You see what I'm saying? Because bundled into that 5.0 update will be hundreds or thousands of security fixes. And if they don't, they'll maintain the previous version for security fixes for a certain point of time. So it's not like your site would be insecure, but you'd miss out on functionality and some of the lesser fixes, lesser improvements and fixes and things like that. So I don't know. I think at the end of the day, more discussion needs to be had. People need to pump the brakes a little bit, and we all need to agree on a way to implement this in such a way as to where it won't blow up in our faces. And I don't know about you, but in WordPress world, when you go out and you pitch WordPress to a client, you're sort of becoming WordPress to that person. You're becoming the official WordPress god. And if what you say, WordPress is affordable, WordPress is secure, WordPress is safe, WordPress is fast, if any of those things turn out not to be true, it doesn't become Matt's fault or some anonymous developer's fault. It becomes your fault and my fault. So that's why we all have a personal vested interest in this thing to make sure it gets done right and responsibly.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of wisdom in what you talk about there. I think Gutenberg's been in development for quite a while already. It's already one of the longest, maybe the longest feature project that's been in development, but it's one of the most drastic changes for the project at a time where it's never had a larger user base too. So it isn't surprising that this has taken longer than any other historic feature project, like big ones that we've had recently, like the REST API and things like that. I'm curious if you were just like in some imaginary world where we could go back in time a little bit, and in those conversations or the brainstorming where people like Matt up at the top are trying to figure out what direction to go and how to remain relevant in this time where alternative platforms are iterating and advancing and doing pretty cool, fancy things. And ideas are being thrown around of how to just like take WordPress to the next level. He wasn't too wrong when he said what got us here won't get us there. And there's a lot of truth to that sort of thinking. But if you were in that conversation and you were tasked with choosing a direction, if you will, like a big focus, this is going to solve the biggest problems that WordPress has. This is the most important thing for us to focus on growing the next 5 or 10%. What would you talk about in that conversation that you see really is needed the most?
Well, it wouldn't be the editing experience, because I think that although the editing experience is traditional, a little tired, it's reliable. It could be spruced up visually just by doing things like making the full screen editor easier and more logical and more prevalent, stuff like that, and putting the sort of admin wrapper in the background a little bit more. Stuff like that is a way that could make the editor feel more modern. Spruce up the toolbar, add a little bit more functionality there. Okay, but let's say we just disagree on that. We've got to go in a way with modular blocks. It's all more efficient. It's all better, blah, blah, blah. We're not just trying to clone what Wix and Squarespace are doing, all that kind of stuff. I think at the end of the day, WordPress needs to tighten up the ship in the sense that we've got to have better, we have to have a better plugin and theme repository. The public plugin and theme repository is just riddled with bad code, with bad themes and plugins, with bad actors. We have to do a better job of policing that. We have to be more efficient about it too, because some people will go in there and post a perfectly legitimate or useful or beautiful design and have to wait months for it to be reviewed initially. I've got a theme out there, and it took weeks on mine, and I thought that was a long time. And now I see people are sometimes waiting months for theirs to be reviewed. So now I don't blame the community at all on that, because a lot of these people, or almost all of them, are just volunteers. So you do what you can when you can. No problem with that. But I think when you've got an organization that has some money, you need to start staffing that department up. You need to say, all right, this is a weakness, but it's also one of our biggest strengths. Let's polish it up. Let's make it easier to find. I mean, the search feature for that's not great. Let's make it easier for people to find great themes. Let's make it easier for people to find great plugins. Let's eliminate some of the fluff. If we've got 15, 20 plugins that do exactly the same thing, let's start finding a way to feature the best ones. And whether that's a community system of upvoting or something like that, which there really isn't now, there's a rating system, but we all know what that is. That's just people's sounding board to complain about things. Oh, this plugin, broke my whole site, 1 star. Well, okay, fair enough, but what if it didn't really break their site and they just did something else stupid? Or this theme is, and here's another major problem. A lot of themes and plugins, they're just freemium versions to try to get you to pay for a premium version, which that something has to be done about that. The fact that a massive amount of the plugins that are really useful only give you about 20% of what they talk about on their descriptions, because there's like a little line that says pro features, and then everything else under there is not something. But when you search for it, it shows up, because WordPress doesn't have any way in its search algorithm to differentiate between free features and pro features. So we should have 2 sections for that, like 2 tabs in the repository under each plugin. It should be features and then premium features. Okay, fine. And then you've got Theme Forest, which is just like a worse version of all that, where your only way of telling us something is good or not is by the star rating and to see if they've been answering questions, except for not everybody even takes support questions there. So you can't rely on that. And anybody who's worked on Theme Forest plugins will tell you they're generally not good. Even if they have a lot of good reviews, they're generally not the best in terms of code, in terms of being updated, in terms of reliability, and bloat and stuff like that. So I think WordPress has to tidy up all those fronts. In terms of big picture, WordPress is not marketed at all. Like, how many times have you turned on the TV and seen a WordPress ad? How many times have you opened up a trade magazine for design or something and seen a WordPress ad? Or how many times have you gone out and seen a big WordPress billboard? I mean, I just never see it. It's this quiet sort of open source initiative that everybody in the design and development world knows about because it's the juggernaut, but nobody who doesn't know about website development knows about it. In other words, when I go to somebody, or when someone asks me to develop a website and they say, well, what should I do? My friend says Wix is great, and my other one uses Squarespace, and I used Wix and the free trial or whatever, and it looked easy and fast. Why should I pay for a website to be designed? And you just want to go, okay, I'm just gonna hang up on you now because you have no idea what you're talking about. That's the problem. They don't know about WordPress in the same way that they know about Wix and Squarespace. And if they do, sometimes they know about the WordPress.com side of things, which isn't on par with the WordPress.org side of things in terms of functionality, customization, and just the community that supports it. So I think on some level, a marketing effort has to be done that's not just WordPress.com, because that doesn't do anybody any good who's not working for Automatic or working on plugins or themes that are compatible with WordPress.com, but an overall WordPress marketing campaign that talks up the fantastic points about WordPress that Wix and Squarespace can't even compete with or can't even come close to. So I think those are a few things. I mean, I could sit here and go on and on about things I think they should do differently. Yeah.
Sure. Well, it's interesting to me. Yeah, they're definitely
I'm
these
not
are
wrong, right? Am I missing marketing campaigns out there somewhere? Like, I don't even see banner ads for WordPress anywhere. I see banner ads from WordPress hosting companies and from WordPress development companies. I don't see a banner ad from WordPress itself saying download WordPress today for free. And you know why? Because it's either WordPress.com or figure it out on your own. It can't be WordPress.com or figure it out on your own. It needs to be just branding WordPress as an entity and a thing. And then there needs to be a page on the site that says, and here's how you do it. Like, here's how you get set up. And the danger there is if they take that to heart, they're just going to push everybody towards WordPress.com. And, I don't think that's the best solution. I just don't think WordPress.com can compare to what a lot of us can do with WordPress.org self-hosted sites.
sure. Yeah, you're totally right. WordPress.com has stepped up their marketing just a little bit recently and has been introducing ad campaigns, but they are for WordPress.com. So there are commercials showing in certain regions and advertising on podcasts and other mediums, which is brand new. First time really that this has even been a thing, talking about WordPress. But no, there isn't any kind of marketing. WordPress has risen to dominance in spite of its complete lack of traditional marketing efforts, which is remarkable, surprising, and you might be onto something, that perhaps this is an area that really needs a focus. Like, imagine, it is kind of a fun exercise to just think about, if we invested, whether it's better or not, if we took the energy that's being spent on Gutenberg and invested that same amount of energy in something different, what would those results be? Whatever we spent on, you suggested some good things, and it's just kind of fun to imagine that if like entire teams were spending a year and a half just heads down, hardcore, working on whatever the theme and plugin repository, it would be an entirely different site. It would be a dramatically different experience. Or they just work it on marketing for WordPress. The promotion for this platform would be hugely different.
Yeah. And I worry about that because, that doesn't seem to be on anybody's radar. It doesn't seem like anybody's job. You know what I mean? It's nobody sitting there every morning going, all right, how am I going to market WordPress today? Like, who's responsible for that? Is anybody responsible for that? I don't think so. And just like you said earlier, he said, I guess you were quoting Matt, something about what got us here won't move us forward. All right, well, 10 years ago, there wasn't a Wix or a Squarespace or anybody else out there, Medium or whoever else, directly competing in a way that they look like a better option to people who don't know any better. So you didn't need to do the marketing back then. Back then, people did a little bit of research on their own. They had to say, okay, what are the options for a website hosting platform? Oh, okay, what are the options for a content management system? Okay, there you go. And now it's a totally different thing. So I'm glad that WordPress has sort of internally shed the whole we're a blogging platform moniker. But if you try to go full circle, sort of like they seem to be doing with this Gutenberg project and sort of like spinning back around to blogging, it doesn't make any sense to me. Blogging is not where the money is. It's not where the money is for us. It's not where the money is for WordPress. There's only so many people out there who are going to sit there and blog all day long. And I think that's probably fairly well saturated. I don't think there's a lot of people sitting around going, I can't imagine there's like a 14-year-old sitting there on the internet right now saying, you know what I want to do when I grow up? I want to be a blogger. Nobody wants to do that. They all want to be the next YouTube star or, whatever. And I don't think anybody wants to be the next blogger. So I don't see a point in trying to make the next biggest, best, most efficient, most visually striking blogging platform. I think content management systems make a lot more sense, and it's the foundation of the business. It's where the money's at in WordPress.
Sure. Yeah. No, I think all the evidence points to you being spot on with that. We're running down on our time here.
Yeah, man.
It's been pretty fun so far. A couple more questions for you before we wrap up here. Do you get involved much in your local scene, or do you attend many events or anything like that? I'm curious, like if there's anything on your calendar where people might bump into in person.
I'm useless about any of that. I haven't done any WordCamps or WordPress events or anything here locally, and I need to. I feel bad about it. And we do. We have people who, and I know one of the guys who works on the local WordPress scene. So I've got to get involved with that. Hopefully, I'll get out more into that. But as of now, not yet. I think this business of WordPress Slack that we're both in is great for people looking for the business side of things and to talk to other people on the business side of WordPress. So people are interested in that. That's something definitely worth looking into.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's cool. Hope to maybe bump into at an event someday. There's a whole lot of different cool conferences in our industry and a lot of stuff going in the Midwest and on the East Coast as well. So that could be nice. Anybody else on the team ever get out much and represent the brand, IRL?
I don't think so. I know that the next thing I want to do is start to go to some of these events. I've got to pick a couple of them and go per year. It'd be nice to get out and meet some of these people that I've talked to online and meet some new folks as well. So that's definitely a goal for 2018 is to go to a couple of events.
Cool. Yeah, that's a good plan. Do you have any good recommendations for guests I should have on the show in the future?
I think, man, your YouTube channel, you've covered just about everybody. I don't know if I know anybody from that you haven't interviewed already, but if I think of anybody, I'll let you know.
Yeah, I appreciate that. No problem. After 4 years, yeah, it's been a lot of people, but it's a it's a big community. There's still a lot of people. I've never had a repeat guest, and I have yet to encounter any difficulty in finding new people. There's a lot of them. Anyway, so what sort of things do you like to do personally, Scott, outside of work?
Well, I don't do anything. I've got a 2-year-old, and that's basically a whole nother full-time job. I mean, fiance and I spend a lot of our time doing things with him. I can't think of anything. I mean, I like baseball. I'm the most boring person in the world, man. Yeah, I'm here all the time. I'm just here pecking away and on, sending out emails and answering messages and things like that. I'm on it pretty much all the time. So I'm one of those people who doesn't. I can't stand email queues. in
Mm.
my inbox. So instead of what a lot of people do is they will wait and answer emails in the order in which they are received. I answer emails instantly. If you send me an email, you may get a response back in less than a minute. It's that insane. I don't know if it's OCD or whatever, but if I see a bolded email in Gmail, I'm like, must answer immediately. I can't, it's compulsive. I have to do it right away because I can't stand it. I have a mental count in my head. If I get over 30 emails that are waiting for a response, I get the shakes. I'm like, oh, something's not right in the world. Things are bad. I try to keep it below somewhere in the 20 range, something like that is a good number for me to be sitting there looking at. So yeah, that's what I do. I sit here and wait for emails. I stare at the screen like some sort of an automaton, like some sort of a real life email bot. It's creepy. Sad. It's sad. I need help.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this has ended in a cry for help from me. That nobody nobody expected that. Nobody saw that coming. I hope they stayed around for the end of the interview because that's
Right.
yeah.
That's great. You are one pathetic loser.
I
No.
know, yeah, I know. I'm gonna have that put on the wall back here. Just it's gonna say "pathetic loser" right beside, and big arrows pointing to me. But your email will be answered instantly.
There's that.
Yeah,
That's
pros and cons.
that's awesome. Well, that's pretty cool. I appreciate you taking the time to join me, Scott. This has been really fun. I loved getting your input on all of these fun new topics. You got a lot of opinions to share and a lot of knowledge of this industry, especially of your market. I really like learning better how that works
Mm-hmm.
and what that landscape looks like. I wish you all the best with Barrel Roll. So yeah, thanks for joining me and sharing your story.
Hey, thanks, man. I appreciate you having me, and keep up the good work, dude. I mean, that's 400. I think you said that's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Well, I'll let you get on with your day. This has been cool and best of luck.
All right, thanks again.